I'm Reverend Michelle Johnson, and welcome to Wednesday's Word of Truth. The title of this episode is Great Things Happen When Our Plan is God's Plan. It's based on the book of Proverbs, chapter 16, verse 9, that reads, "We plan the way we want to live, but only God makes us able to live it." Saints of God, when we are in close relationship with God, there abides within us a semblance of the mind of God. It is not that we have the mind of God, but that we are so inclined to think and reason as God does. Therefore, when the author of the book of Proverbs writes in chapter 16, verse 9, "We plan the way that we want to live," it is best understood as we plan the way that we want to live as God would plan the way that we should live. Therein lies the credence of the second half of the conjunctive clause that says, "But only God makes us able to live it." It does stand to reason that God would only enable us to carry out a life plan that has God's approval. Of course, the only thing that God approves of is that which has its origins in the Holy of Holies. If the latter is found not to be true, then we would have to conclude that God also makes us able to live out plans that are in opposition to the character of heaven. That, my friends, will never be true. The truth is, the closer we stay in step with God, the greater the likelihood that we will envision a life for ourselves that has heaven's stamp of approval. The moment we begin to forsake our intimacy with God is when we begin to veer off course. It is then that we develop tendencies that are in opposition to the mind of God. This is when we begin to want to do our own thing and expect God to bless it. My brothers and sisters, in Luke's record of the gospel at chapter 12, verse 32, Jesus so graciously says, "It is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." However, the grace of heaven ain't cheap. It comes at a cost, and that cost is our obedience to kingdom living. The greater our obedience to the sayings and teachings of Jesus the Christ, the greater our access to the inheritance of the kingdom of God. Saints of God, the year of 2024 is a good year to get in stride with God. Perhaps you have done things your own way for a long time. I suspect that has not worked out well for you. So why not get somewhere and sit down and listen for what God has to say? You have sought everyone else's opinion. Now it's time to hear from heaven. I promise you that whatever plans you make with God will be more than you have ever imagined. The Apostle Paul reminds us later in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20, that God is able to do abundantly more than we ask or think.